three fundamental answers to the question of, one, how did we get here? Random mutations. And you say, now, well, why are we here? Well, of course, if it was random mutations, that meant there was an accident. If there was an accident, then there was no purpose for us to be here. So we look at our existence as totally a freak of genetics, you know, shaking genetic dice, and look, we won the game. And here we are at this point, but we have no reason to be here. But they did have a very, very strong answer for the third question, how do you make the best of it? Because the understanding that Darwin provided us with is that evolution was a struggle for survival with a competition for fitness. And so really it says that life is an eternal struggle. You're out there, and if you don't compete, that you will be taken over by someone behind you. You will lose your place in the whole structure. So therefore, we get up every day and live in a world like a rat race. I mean, my father never went to school, didn't study Darwin, but certainly understood the nature of a civilization that was built on competition and one beating the other person, etc., and a winner-loser mentality. And so we were learning to live by the laws of the jungle. It's actually not the real jungle. It's more or less the laws of the human jungle, for a simple reason. Science didn't come with any morality. Science came with conclusions. Conclusion is you have to be fit to survive. And I said, well, what is being fit? Well, the answer to that question was not relevant to science, because science was interested in the end, but not the means. Survival is all that counts. You say, well, what does it take to survive? You say, well, you can be a brainiac like Albert Einstein. Or you could be some jerk with an Uzi and blow everybody else away and be the winner. So all of a sudden, it didn't make a difference how you won, because science didn't have any answers to how you should, you know, carry out your behavior in the processes. Just as long as you win is the answer. So that's the world we live in today, and you can see how people can be so, you know, abusive to everyone else in a world that says, hey, it makes no difference about the other people. If you're up at number one, you deserve to be number one, and if they're down at the bottom, they deserve to be down at the bottom, and that's called Darwinian theory of evolution, and we all live by it. Well, we bought these answers, and we bought science as a truth provider. Remember I said whoever provides the answers is the truth provider. So in the previous civilization, we bought the answers from the church, and whenever you had a question about life at any kind of level, you would go to a black-coated priest. And then after Darwin, we bought the answers from science. So if you have any questions about life, you go to a white-coated priest called a scientist at this point. And yeah, basically, what we're finding is, well, what's happening? Well, here's what's happening. The answers to the questions have changed. The answers have changed at the level of front end of science, but it's not really come out fully to the public. So the public is in a limbo state, not knowing that the answers that we have been living by, the questions, the basal paradigm questions, the answers to those have been changed radically. What does it mean? Well, every time the answers change, the civilization changes. Yeah, but the civilization is in a process of change for number one reason, because we know it's not working, and number two, it's not really there yet because the new truths have not fully come out to the public. And as soon as the public is aware of this, it changes the behavior of how we live on this planet, how we respond to each other, how we live our personal lives. So I will now tell you what is the issue with today's civilization in regard to the truths that have been changed. And so I call them the four myth perception, that's not a list, myth, M-Y-T-H, myth perceptions of the apocalypse. And what I mean by these are four beliefs that we live by. We see them as a current truth, and we created a life around them. Each one of these beliefs is flawed or outright totally wrong at this point. And the significance is, by continuing to live by these beliefs, that we are continuing to drive ourselves toward extinction, because it's the beliefs that we've been living by that are creating the absolute extinction that we're facing in the world. So now that we have these beliefs understood, I'm going to just listen for you, then I'll talk about each one of the four. So the four misperceptions that are now wrong, the ones that we're living by, is number one, biological processes employ Newtonian physics. You say, well, okay, what the heck does that mean? No, very briefly, it means this. In a Newtonian physics model of the universe, you actually count on the material world and discount the invisible world as not being relevant to the physical expression of the planet. So basically, you focus on materialism and exclude anything in the spiritual plane. That's not really being relevant to physics. Myth perception number two is genes control biology. And as I talk about, this is a belief that has victimized us because apparently the genes control us and we don't control the genes. So we live as victims in the world. Myth perception number 3 is that the Darwinian belief that evolution is predicated on the survival of the fittest. This is totally, absolutely wrong, and yet you can understand what kind of behavior would be derived if this was a truth that we live by, and this is what we really have to overcome. And myth perception number 4 is that evolution is a random process, and this is really a very bad belief system and is really primarily responsible for the problem that we have with dealing with nature right now because we see ourselves as disconnected from nature. So I'm going to review each of the 4 myth perceptions and then talk about each one and a little bit of the science about the new understanding very briefly, I hope, if I don't overrun my time. So thank you. Okay, so myth perception number 1, biology is based on Newtonian physics. I said, what is the cultural expression of that? If this is a truth, how would you live with that? Well, number 1, you focus on the material realm. Obviously, the invisible realm, according to physics, is not really relevant. Why would anybody waste their time with it? And then you focus on the material realm, and then I have to add in a little bit about the Darwinian story because this changes how you focus on the material realm. Remember, the Darwinian story is the survival of the fittest for the competition. Well, how do you know where you stand in that competition? And the answer is, how much material do you possess? In a material world, and that's primary, then the more material you have, the fitter you are. Meaning money, possessions, all that stuff. And look at the world that we live in. I mean, I think about this. There are so many self-storage facilities because we have so many possessions we can't even keep them in our own house. We're just accumulating all these things. So obviously, what does it mean to the planet? That means you absolutely raided the planet to take all the materials out of the planet so you can distribute it to all the fit people who are worthy of those materials. As I said, you disconnect from the spiritual realm, it's not being existent, and this becomes a very serious problem because, as we'll find out, it is existent. So we should understand that, and I'll talk about the new understanding about that. It also leads us to the belief that organisms are DNA-controlled robots, that you're a physical machine. That if there's anything wrong with your health, it's just like a broken vehicle, like a car. You take it to a repair person and you put some new parts called drugs or whatever into the system, trying to get the machine working again, and you happen to be like the backseat driver in your own body. That your body is a machine, like a vehicle, and it's driving, and you're sitting in the back saying, please turn right, and the vehicle turns left and really irritates the hell out of you. Sometimes you can't figure out why it's not working the way you want it to work. I said, okay, so what's wrong with this belief? Well, the concept is this. Quantum physics came along in 1925 as an accepted understanding of the universe. It didn't displace Newtonian physics and throw it away. Newtonian physics still works, but quantum physics is a bigger science. It subsumed the Newtonian physics. It's a bigger understanding of the world. And the basic understanding of quantum mechanics is that in Newtonian physics, we look at the world as being a material, mechanical, physical mechanism. And then you look at it in terms of quantum mechanics, and they say, what's physical? What material? There is nothing physical and material in this world. And then, of course, you look at me like, don't be absurd, I'm sitting on a seat, and I'm physically here looking at you being a physical person in front of the room. And I go, well, that's where the problem comes from. It's all an illusion. And I said, what do you mean illusion? Well, when we went to school, you and I, we went to school, we looked at the Newtonian atom, you know, as little marbles, ball bearings, little tiny solar system, and it was a physical representation that represented the physical world, so it all made sense that atoms have physicality to it. But quantum physicists on the right think there's nothing wrong with the slide. That was an illusion. Because when they went inside those protons and inside those neutrons and inside those electrons and said, so what are they made out of? They found they were made out of energy. They were made out of like miniature nano tornadoes, vortices of energy. And the significance about that is, well, hell, if an atom is made out of energy and an atom makes molecules, then molecules must be energy. And if molecules make cells, and cells are energy, and cells make us, my God, we are energy as well. It's only an illusion of the light that you see the physicality because the light bounces off this energy. And so everything is actually made out of energy. And since everything's made out of energy, then by that definition, everything is entangled. You say, well, how did that come into the picture? And I go, if everything was physical, I could separate one physical object from another and study it separately from the other object. And I go, well, we perceive to do that, but the reality is every object is also emanating an energy field, because all atoms are energy fields. So everything becomes entangled. No matter how far you pull it apart, it's still entangled. The whole planet is one entangled energy mass. There's nothing separate from anything else on this planet. And this is what quantum mechanics is trying to tell people. And the energy is emanating from everything even that we perceive as physical. And of course, that's the basis of feng shui. Feng Shui says when you put an object somewhere, it's not just the object, it's the energy of the object that is influencing the field. So the Asians were much more into the energy aspect than the Westerners. We have to learn that. So there says that there's an energy field, and this is the word field, that's what they use in physics. And I say, what's the field? Well, it's the invisible stuff that surrounds us. We are immersed in a field. I say, between you and me, there's an energy field. And yet, where you are, that's an energy focus. So a physical structure is a focus of energy, and the rest is this energy field.